Okay, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum all, and thank you for joining us again. Tonight, our topic will be focusing on if Islamic schools are achieving what they promise. And with me, I have Dr. Nadeem Memon. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Nadeem.
Alaikum salam.
Just a quick bio. Dr. Nadeem Memon is a senior research fellow and the program director for Islamic education at SITE in the University of South Australia. His research focuses on teacher education with particular emphasis on Islamic pedagogy, comparative faith-based schooling, philosophy of religious education, and culturally responsive teaching. So we'll get started, inshallah. Our first question is, what is it that Islamic schools promise?
So, Bismillah, I think it's a very important question, and I'm glad that we had the question on the Facebook thread as well. People were commenting. The promise of Islamic schooling, I think, is it's very clear in the minds of us as educators, and at the same time, sometimes clear in principle and not in practice. And what I mean by that is, we know that the promise of Islamic schooling is to raise and nurture learners, Muslim learners, with a deep sense of consciousness of their faith, of taqwa, really, of a deep sense of taqwa. I remember speaking to an educator, a pioneer in Islamic schooling in the United States years ago, Brother Dawood Tawhidi, may Allah have mercy on his soul, passed away a few years ago, and he was the person that came up with the Tarbiyah framework curriculum in the US. And he said, and I asked him a similar question about the vision of Islamic schooling, and he said, you know, we speak a lot about Islamic education, but what it boils down to, the promise, he said, is it boils down to being Muslim. He said, as simple as that. It's about being Muslim. And he said, it sounds simple, but it's a really deep vision and promise, because being Muslim means being ethical. It means living in a manner of the method and practice and character of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. It means embodying everything that we speak about when we speak about the vision of Islam and the practice of Islam. So being Muslim, he said, for him encapsulates the promise. And I think in many ways, you know, we can speak about different concepts of education, but what it boils down to is living it, living in a way that our Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, taught us to live, with a sense of conviction in Allah, a conviction in the hereafter, and a conviction in having an ethical lifestyle of the way we interact with people and the way we live ourselves.
SubhanAllah, it's amazing that you've mentioned him, because today with my team we were looking at the personal development and health syllabus, and we've been using his framework, the Tarbiyah Project framework, as an inspiration, because he mentioned strong themes such as tazkiyah, you know, purifying ourselves, what else, vicegerency and muhasabah. And so for me, when I think about what is it that Islamic schools would like to achieve, all of that is embodied in what we aim to achieve. However, is it the case? Are we achieving these things? And how do we even measure that? Is it being measured?
Right. Yeah, all important questions. And I think that's why people who've established schools and who are at the front end of leading the vision of schools, we've articulated a vision, like Brother Dawood Tawhidi did, with these concepts of tazkiyah and muhasabah, of self-reflection, of tazkiyah, of nurturing and purifying yourself, and tarbiyah and ta'lim and ta'deeb, and all of these different concepts and terms. Principle, we can articulate it. And I think if you look at the visions of many schools, pretty much all the Islamic schools out there have really lofty visions. I remember years ago I did a study where I looked at just vision statements of schools. And if you look at our vision statements, in principle, it's there. We might use it in different ways. We might articulate it in slightly different angles, but all of those elements are there. The question that you asked rightfully is, are we putting it in practice? And how do we measure it? And I think that's where it becomes really sticky. Because the question of, that we've been debating in moral education for years is, how do you measure morality? You can teach character education, you can teach ethical behavior. Well, the question, it actually leads to the question, can we even teach ethical behavior, or do we model it? But we can model ethical behavior, we can model moral behavior, and we can hope that we're nurtured through the school environment and everything else that we have in a school. How do you measure it? And I think that's why the concept of muhasaba, of self-reflection, which is embedded in the Islamic tradition, is so powerful. Because really the best measure is yourself. It's really a relationship between yourself and Allah. And for us as educators working in Islamic schools, it's a measure of whether it's a self-reflection of ourselves, or whether we feel we are doing our utmost. And similarly for students, it's a measure of themselves, of whether they feel they've put their best foot forward. Recognizing that you're not going to be perfect, right? The essence of Islamic education is not to achieve ihsan, it's not to achieve excellence, but to strive for excellence, knowing that we will never actually achieve excellence. We can never replicate the level of character of our Prophet, who is perfect in his character, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But what we can do is we can continue to strive for it. And when we fall short, we can correct ourselves and iterate and pivot and make sure that we are able to change our direction to improve. So the question about measure comes down to, are we able to foster in ourselves and in our students in Islamic schools a sense of muhasaba, of deep self-reflection, where when a student does something inappropriate, we don't have to scold them, we don't have to reprimand them, and we don't have to give them detention, but they have a sense of consciousness where they themselves recognize that was inappropriate, my actions have implications on others, and I should be doing something different. And that can start at a very young age. I mean, children at a very young age have this sense of consciousness, but it's a matter of fostering it consciously as part of our aim and promise of Islamic schools, in the ethos of our school, first and foremost with ourselves, and then with our students.
MashaAllah, I definitely agree. So then, have you observed this occurring successfully? Are there challenges that get in the way of implementing this notion of muhasaba and living muhasaba? Yeah.
I think one of the comments on our Facebook thread, when you put the poll out there, the yes and no of do people feel we're achieving the promise, I think a few people
have voted no. The majority have voted no. So I think we have around at the moment who have voted no, and 9 who have voted yes.
Yeah, and one person said, it's complicated, because in every school you have a few teachers that are standout teachers, and you always have some teachers that are, they're trying, right? But we always feel like there's some educators in the school that kind of get it. I think one of the challenges we have in our schools is making this sense of this promise a lived commitment amongst all of our staff consistently. And again, that will be an ongoing challenge. So your question to me about whether I've seen it in schools, I think what I've seen in schools is an effort to take these concepts and principles, like the ones we've spoken about, and embed them into the fabric of the entire school ethos, from curriculum to instructional practice to assessment policy to behavioral policies, every aspect of the educational standards of the state that we live in, whichever state that might be anywhere in the world. It's about saying to ourselves, how do we embed this philosophy, these principles of tazkiyah, of muhasaba, into the very fabric of our school? That is, to me, a move towards the successful, the successful measure of the promise. Because again, if it's not front and center in our school, and if it's just left for a vision statement that's on the wall somewhere, or on a brochure somewhere, it's not part of our lived practice. But what I've seen in schools that are aspiring for a truly integrated feeling of education influenced by, or shaped by, or informed by the vision of education in the Islamic tradition, is to make these principles front and center in everything in the school.
It seems like a lot of work for a school that's already established, because you're talking about many elements that need to be revamped: pedagogy, curriculum, policies. So I can see new schools being able to do this with a lot more ease in comparison to those schools who have been well established for many years. Where would they start?
Yeah, that's a great question. I can see how it seems easier for a new school, but I don't think it's overly difficult for even an established school, because one of the big benefits of an established school is that they've taken care of the sort of the day-to-day challenges of a new school. So you kind of have the rhythm in place, right? Like you've kind of gone through the accreditation process. You've gotten that out of the way. You have a good consistent staff generally. You have a good consistent student body. So you feel like the financial aspects of the school are relatively stable. Sort of the challenges that a new school is still going through and getting established. And now it's a matter of that sense of renewal and return. And how do we begin to question and improve ourselves in an established school? So the suggestion that I've made to a lot of schools is to begin with a reading group, really a professional learning community. It's not going to happen overnight, but rather than have a sage on the stage and somebody who comes and says, an outside consultant, or a sheikh, or somebody who comes in who says, this is what Islamic pedagogy is, these are the principles of Islamic education, and this is how we're going to infuse it across the school. It has to be organic, and it has to be ground up. And I think a professional learning community where educators are looking for something, are reading about these sorts of concepts and reflecting on what they can do to take it into their practice, over time, consistently, that will create and develop a change, an organic change in the school, of renewal. And I think that's, to me, it starts right from the hiring process. Every time a new teacher comes in, the types of questions we ask in an interview have to reflect the direction of the school's vision. And then when the new teacher comes in, they come in and they realize, wow, there's a professional learning community happening in this school. I need to pull up my socks, and I need to really, begin to not just teach in my classroom, but reflect on the full schooling experience. Because a lot of times we get lost in our individual curriculum, of our individual grid, and that's all we do. But we want all of us as educators to be big picture thinkers, to say to ourselves, what's happening at a high level in terms of the vision of the school, that we need to be part of shaping.
Okay, so it sounds like a lot of collaboration is involved, and a lot of us sharing the same vision. Besides pedagogy, then, what about the content itself and the curriculum itself? It seems like if we were to collaborate in making sure that there's a more holistic approach rather than just segmenting Quran and Islamic studies from the other subjects, then it seems like a more doable and achievable goal. Would you agree?
Yeah, it does. I've always felt for a long time that curriculum is secondary. Yeah. Maybe that's a good thing, but I do feel that one of our biggest challenges in our schools, I've seen globally, is to get a sense of deep commitment in our schools. Islamic schools need to become places where people are there because they're passionate about being there.
Mm-hmm.
And that will change everything else. The amount of turnover and the attrition rates that we have of educators in Islamic schools needs to be addressed. And one of the ways, I mean, obviously there's a financial aspect to this too, and I don't want to deny that, but one of the other ways is getting teachers, getting educators and ourselves as school leaders and really the whole staff to believe in the vision at a very deep level. That will then trickle down to everything else, including curriculum.
Okay. I mean, how do you do that when it comes to Islamic pedagogy? Because this is something that comes from within. You could be as influential as possible, but it, you know, at times, at that educator's moment in life, it's just not the right fit for them, and perhaps they won't be able to really visualize and immerse themselves within that vision, or they might not think it's necessary because they feel as though they're fulfilling their role as an educator, and that suffices.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I feel like when there's a group of educators in a school that are passionate about what they do, it's infectious, and infectious in a good way, right?
Yep.
It spreads. So it's really, like I said, it has to be organic. It's not going to happen overnight. But what you will have is, if you, over time, if you have that small group of educators that are passionate about the vision and considering about what this vision means for practice, right? The combination between theory and practice, the intersections between theory and practice are very important. And one of the challenges that we have in our schools is that in all schools, not just Islamic schools, but in all schools, is that you go through some sort of a teacher preparation program, some sort of a Bachelor of Education, and then sometimes people go through a Master's of Education, but eventually people stop reading.
Yes.
And stop reflecting on education, on educational theory, and it becomes all practice. And the flip side of it is, you have some people who are educators or academics who just read, and they don't reflect on practice. So that interplay is very, very important between theory and practice. And I think, again, if you have that nucleus of teachers that are constantly reflecting on it doesn't even need a lot of theory. It's really just take your vision statement and on a monthly basis ask yourself, what are we as a school doing to achieve this vision, and what can we be doing better? Because one of the things I really appreciated when I read the poll and I saw that the majority of people said we're not achieving our promise, I wanted to say one thing, which is I wouldn't take that as a bad thing.
Okay.
I see the majority of educators who said, on the poll at least, who said we're not achieving our promise, as a constructive criticism of ourselves.
Yeah.
We're achieving a lot of good things. And in many ways, our schools, Islamic schools, have grown exponentially in the quality of what we are able to, the type of education we've been able to provide for learners over the past few decades. But that's not to take away from a constructive criticism. And I think to be constructively critical is part of that necessary step of ongoing growth that you always need.
Yes.
No matter how good we think we are, there's always got to be room for improvement. And if we begin to see ourselves as we've achieved it, yes, we've achieved the promise, it's all done, wrapped and ready to go. I don't think that's a good place to be. And I'm not saying that not to take away from what we've achieved, but to push ourselves, because excellence is something that we keep pushing toward.
That's right. Well, I mean, you're mentioning Islamic principles yourself, so this is part of modeling that for our students. Okay, then how do we support educators? Because a lot of the time I hear educators feeling as though they're very keen, they're quite interested. However, time is a factor. They feel a bit bogged down in terms of a lot of the paperwork that's required for submission, compiling a load of assessment papers, programs, making sure that they submit these things on time. So it kind of becomes on the back burner. What could we do to support our educators to make sure that they're doing this with passion and they are finding the time?
Yeah, that's an important question, and I think all educators, it probably resonates with all of us as educators. Um, I'd like to say that, the conventional answer of the school administration needs to carve out time for educators to think and reflect and so on. But I feel there's also a responsibility on ourselves as individuals.
Yes.
And, it's kind of like an individual saying, I can't focus on Salah. Day after day, I have so much on my mind that when I go to make Salah, I just can't focus because my head is spinning with different things. And what's the answer that somebody's going to give you when you have off time and you need to really, make a good wudu, and then, get into the headspace and all of that type of stuff. Similarly, there's a level of responsibility on all of us as educators to say to ourselves, look, despite everything that's happening and the piles of marking that I have on my desk and the crisis that keeps happening with the odd student in my classes and so on, and all of the requirements of the administration, that deadlines that I haven't met. Aside from all of that, there has to be an ethic within ourselves of aspiring for ongoing learning. I learned this from another school educator, pioneer, again in the U.S., Dr. Seema Imam, who I should mention because she's been a mentor to me and likely might even be listening. But she, for me, modeled a long time ago what it meant to be in a space of ongoing learning. And I haven't seen people like that very often, who are professors of education, school educators, former school principal, but still learning and never stopping. And I think, and I'm saying this for myself first, because I feel myself, sometimes I get so caught up in just producing work or doing work and doing more work, but you're not actually sitting and reading and reflecting. So I guess what I'm trying to say is it goes two ways. It's very easy for me to sit here and say all school principals should just carve out an hour a week so that teachers can have a professional learning community. That's the easy way of saying it. The hard way of saying it is, no, we should all be carving out some space for ourselves every week, where we are growing, not just as Muslims, which is also important, but as Muslim educators, because of the role that we're in schools.
Amana, and I think, subhanAllah, what you're saying really resonates with me, because we're at an advantage of being educators. So we have that responsibility to grow with our learners, but at the same time, it does affect us positively within our own personal lives. So we are at a huge advantage. And one thing that I personally think to myself is, let this, at times it is a struggle, at times we get exhausted, but let this be our struggle. And if this is our struggle, alhamdulillah, we're so blessed if this is our struggle in life. So everything you've said just truly resonates with me.
It's very true. It is a struggle, and you're right. It's a very rewarding struggle to be a part of. But that's where we want to get all of our educators, including ourselves, in Islamic schools, right? And not to say that we're already there. Again, I'm not saying that we're not there, but to say that to be constantly there and consistently there. And if I had to be self-critical of myself, I'd have to admit that I'm rarely there myself. With that sense of this struggle is worth it, and with that sense of what am I learning now to improve my own self, and not just that, but connecting that again to the vision, right? To say to ourselves, I'm buying in wholeheartedly to the vision of the school, but then asking myself, what am I doing to contribute to that vision?
Yes.
I was reading. There's a recent translation of Imam al-Ghazali's one of his books of the Ihya, and it's the book on pride, and it's the book on pride, and it's the recent translation of his work, and there's a section in there where it speaks about one of the ways to get over pride, and he talks about different forms of pride. It says, you can have pride of your wealth and pride of your your beauty, pride of your knowledge, and pride of your lineage. And he said one of the ways to get over the pride of your lineage is to say to yourself, I didn't do anything to be part of this lineage. Allah gave me this lineage. I was born into this lineage. But what have I done to contribute to this lineage? So he said, if you turn it around and somebody says, oh, you're from X, family, wow, and you say, yeah, but I don't deserve it because I haven't done anything to contribute to that lineage. And I think that's the same thing with Islamic schools, with our work in Islamic schools, say to ourselves, yes, we have a lofty vision, but what have I done to contribute to that vision? And to constantly be asking ourselves that as a method of self-reflection.
100%. We have to always remind ourselves that it is Allah that has placed us in this position. It is Allah that has placed us in this environment. And so how do we show gratitude towards that? And yeah, that goes back to our responsibility and our actions.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't believe 30 minutes has just flown past really fast. I'll just quickly read the comments just to see if anyone has any questions. So just excuse me. So someone's proposing we expand the definition of curriculum, not to say it's more than curriculum. We risk creating a false binary. Curriculum is secondary. And okay, so this comment, curriculum is secondary. Is this because it is through pedagogies that education gets done? So going back to Lingard's theories.
Yeah, I think, curriculum is secondary, partly because of that, but partly also because your pedagogy at its most robust level is inclusive of curriculum.
That's right.
Pedagogy is it's a way of being. It brings together everything from vision to commitment to instructional practice to curriculum. It's all inclusive. And I think the reason why I say curriculum is secondary is not also to be not also as a way of being rude to the contributions that we've made and the striving that we're doing to develop an Islamic curriculum or an integrated curriculum within schools, but to say that curriculum takes time. And curriculum is also a way of being. That you need that deep connection with the vision of the school and a sense of what's distinct to shape curriculum, to inform curriculum.
I go back on the example of you could have one textbook and two teachers delivering it quite differently. One might deliver it well, one quite dry. So it really comes back to the teacher and the pedagogy, because ultimately, I mean, even with resources, I find that people ask a lot about, how can I purchase? Is there a resource? Where's the content for this? Can I purchase it? But like I said, you could provide the resource, but the delivery would have a totally different outcome. So this goes back to ourselves, reflecting on ourselves as educators, and like you said, our pedagogies becoming, we need to be responsive towards our students.
Yeah, exactly. And again, nothing to take away from the resources that exist or from our reliance on resources or curriculum. I think all of those things are important. The development, the years of development that have been going on in individual schools and in organizations to develop a curriculum that is, holistically, authentically integrated or infused, or whatever we might want to call it. I don't want to take away from all of that effort or from the teachers that aspire to have resources that will inspire them. But to say that, the only reason I say it's secondary is because I feel that we've spent a lot of time talking about curriculum, but we don't speak enough about connecting and reflecting on vision. So I'm just trying to shift the emphasis, and that's it. Okay.
Well, inshallah, we will all take your advice back to our schools and shift the focus, start focusing on our vision. Hopefully it will be the new buzzword where we discuss this during the staff room luncheons and so on.
Inshallah.
Okay. With that, I'd like to thank you. It's been an honor to interview you. We've gained so much from it. So thank you for taking the time to share with us all vital information. May Allah reward you.
All of us. Amen.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.